I have black and my opponent plays e4. All right, I'll play a Sicilian defense with c5. He plays bc4, aiming at the pawn on f7. For now, there's no real danger. I'll play knight c6. Sometimes the knight can come to e5 to defend f7, attack the bishop, and attack the queen if the queen comes to f3, for example. He plays knight to f3. I consider responding with knight to f6. If he plays a5, knight to g4, double attack on his pawn. He can defend with queen to e2, and I can attack with queen to c7. I'm not afraid of moves like knight to g5 to attack f7 because I have e6. So I'll play knight to f6. If he plays knight to g5 to coordinate with the bishop in attacking f7, I have a6, but he plays d3. Pawn to d6, I free my bishop on the white square. There it is, he plays knight to g5. He's threatening captures, but simply e6. We intercept. He does kingside castling. I could chase his knight, but I don't need to weaken the pawn structure around my king. I can calmly play bishop a7 and kingside castling. Now, if the knight is no longer there, there will be a double attack on the kvd g5, which is only protected once. So I'm looking to do kingside castling, and then certainly the d5 push. You see on the d5 push, pawn takes. I can recapture with the pawn, attacking the bishop, but I can also recapture with the knight to attack his knight on g5. Well, for now, I'll simply kingside castling. And I'll take a serious interest in his pushes on d5. He plays f4, and I'll be even more interested now since he's trying to launch an attack on the wing. Attack on the wing, reaction in the center, and the reaction in the center is the d5 push here. All right, I'll push d5. I'm attacking his bishop. I'm threatening captures on e4, maybe some queen's exchanges afterwards. I haven't yet decided what I'll do, whether I'll recapture with the pawn or the knight. If I recapture with the pawn, the bishop, I don't know where it's going, maybe to b3 or b5. I don't know which is better. Recapturing with the pawn also frees my bishop. I'm going to recapture with the pawn. That seems the most logical, because then there could be bishops to g4 coming up. A lot of attacking moves, bishops to g4 against his queen, knight to d4 could also happen. You see, on bishop's g4, if he goes to e1, knight d4 will threaten to capture on c2 with forks. He goes to b3, there he's securing c2. He can play bishop's g4, maybe he'll put the queen on e1, rook to e8. But the queen might be able to go to g3 afterwards. I don't know which is best. Listen, here I'm going to play h6. I'm not convinced my move is relevant, but we're going to make his knight retreat. He won't go to h3 because bishop takes, pawn takes, and that ruins his pawn structure. So he'll come to f3 and maybe bishop g4, the pin, with ideas of following up with knight d4, attacking the pinned knight to try at some point, if there's a capture, to force him to recapture with the pawn and damage his pawn structure. There we go, bishop g4. He plays knight d2, so on knight d4 he'll move to e1. If I take it, he's able to recapture with the knight, and the bishop b3 defends c2, so I can't take c2. The bishop on b3 is bothering me. Here, maybe bishop d6. I'm teasing the pawn f4 that the bishop no longer defends, since it has the knight on d2, and I'm going to encourage it to play g3 to weaken the white squares of its castling. Since his bishop on a white square is located on the other side, he'll have trouble defending white squares on the king side. I'll have my white square bishop supported. See, he plays g3. Afterwards, I could break through on h3, but the rook comes to e1, so it's not too dangerous here. If I play knight takes d4 and he plays c3, I can take his white square bishop, but in any case, he doesn't use his white square bishop much. But I'm also looking at knight d5 to bounce to e3 and threaten forks. Afterwards, he could play rook to e1. All right, I'll still play knight takes d4. I'll put pressure on the knight on f3, which is pinned. And in case of c3, I'll think about it. You see, here I'm hesitating between nd5 and taking the bishop, but I think I'll take the white square bishop. Although knight to f5 is still good, how does he solve the problem on e3? His knight can't really move except to go back to b1. If he plays rook to e1, he can play rook to e1. No, here I'm going to stick to my color strategy. I'm going to take his bishop on the white square because I think he'll have trouble defending the white squares around the king. He put his entire pawn structure on the black square. So now he's coming to bother the c5 pawn. He recaptured with the knight. Okay, for now that's defending. I'm going to place a rook on the file. It can't hurt. And then how to attack the white squares. How to strengthen the attack. Maybe queen to d7, queen to f5, queen to h5 to reinforce the attack on the knight. That would already be pretty good. And if the bishop is no longer there at some point, there could be knight to g4 with the attack on h2 as well. His pawns on black squares are hindering his black square bishop. He plays queen to d2 to avoid being pinned. Now, where can his knight go? For now, nowhere. If it comes to e5, I win a pawn, actually. So I'll play queen to d7, connecting my rooks, and my queen uses the white squares and white diagonals to try to infiltrate at some point. He plays queen to f2. Maybe bishop to h3, I attack his rook, and then knight to g4 afterwards. See how we can break through on the white squares? That's interesting. Now he's attacking c5. But will he have time to do it? Bishop h3, rooks to f1, knight to g4. I attack his queen with check. So he doesn't have time to capture on c5. Okay, let's play bishop to h3. Now, if he takes on c5, I play bishop takes, queen takes, and he loses the rook. And when I need to defend c5, I'll play b6. I'll consolidate on the black squares, no problem. So after rook to e1, knight to g4, he can take with check, but the rook recaptures, and all my pieces are active, the bishop, the knight, and the rook. So he plays rook to g1. And knight to g4, we're attacking the queen. If he takes on c5 to attack my queen, knight takes queen mate. Now he's looking for the squares for his queen. He has them, but he's looking for them. He comes to c2. If the queen isn't there anymore, knight to f2, that's mate. But how do you distract his queen from the square on f2? That's the problem. There's queen to f5 and queen takes on d3. Queen takes and knight to f2 is mate, plus it creates a royal fork. That could be fun. Let's play queen to f5. If I play knight to h4 to attack my queen, queen takes on d3. Queen takes knight to f2 is still mate. Otherwise, when my queen was on d7, maybe I could have played d4, e takes, and queen to c6 to attack along the diagonal. That must have been very strong too. Well, here the advantage with queen takes d3 is that I'll be attacking his queen and his knight. And do you see how I managed to infiltrate on the white squares here? h3, g4, f5. He put everything on black, so I'm infiltrating on white. With complete control of the only strategic bishop located upon a white square. So he plays qd2, but what stops me from playing qd3? Nothing, really. I can do it. All right, queen d3. And you see, after queen takes f2, not only does it create the royal fork, it also wins the queen, but it's mate with the bishop controlling g2. And if he doesn't take the queen, I'm about to take his knight now. Or take his queen to deliver mate afterwards on f2. Rook to e1. So here, all you have to do is queen takes knight, but I'm checking if there's something prettier, though I don't think so. We can also consider rook takes rook. If he recaptures with the knight, queen to f1 is mate. After rook takes rook check, if he recaptures with the queen, there will always be queen takes knight. Well, actually, you have to play queen takes knight. Now he's forced to go to g1. Now I'm going to take his rook with check. And now I have queen. I have two mates. And there you go, mate on the white square. And look at this position with the queen on g2, the bishop on h3, and the knight on g4. Do you see how it infiltrated on the white squares ever since he put his pawns on black square and my strategy to take his light square bishop so I could infiltrate on the white squares? That's what the color play is about. From the moment you trade a bishop for a knight, one side becomes stronger on one color, for example, the black squares, and the other side mechanically becomes stronger on the white squares. And so to know who is getting the better deal, you have to look at the pawn structure. If your opponent has holes everywhere on the white squares, those are infiltration routes on the white squares, and you'll need to have superiority on the white squares. If, for example, I had superiority on the black squares, it would be much less interesting for me in this position, since his pawn structure would defend the black squares. So new game, and I'm going to play the knight to f3, which is a fairly flexible move. I still don't know how I'm going to use the pawns on e2, d2, and c2. We'll see. My opponent plays nc6, and I'm going to play d4 to secure the e5 square, because nc6 could support the push to e5. So here I'm locking down the e5 square to avoid getting hit by that push. He plays d5, and now I can play c4 to attack his central pawn with my flank pawn. Why not? And since he has the knight on c6, he won't have the option to play c6 to defend his center. So he takes, it's a kind of queen's gambit accepted, where I have to recapture the c4 pawn. And usually you just play e3 to free the bishop, so that's what I'm going to do. I could play e4, but e4 also exposes my e4 pawn to moves like knight to f6, and so it delays recapturing my c4 pawn. And he plays b5. Well, it seems to be the trend these days to want to play the queen's gambit accepted and cling to the c4 pawn. All right, so I play a 4. This time he can't play a 6 because obviously there are captures on b5 and the win of the rook, and he can't play c6 because of the knight. So in the end, the b5 pawn and the c4 pawn are going to fall. So it's surprising that I end up with this kind of play from black, which is objectively not very good, and yet from players who are rated 1800 on Lichess. So I'm quite surprised here. Usually players at this level rarely go into this kind of variation. He plays bishop to a 6, but here I take on b5, bishop takes, then knight to a 3, I attack the bishop and the c4 pawn. That's how you should proceed, you see. And knight to a 3, it's a bit strange to put the knight on the edge, but it's for a good reason. We attack the bishop and we attack the c4 pawn twice. So we're going to win back the c4 pawn, which gives good competition, and I'll have a better pawn structure. Now he plays a 6 because he thinks that after knight takes, pawn takes, if I take the rook, the queen defends. But it's the c4 pawn that I want to take. So either I recapture with the knight, but I think I'll recapture with the bishop to develop my game. And after bishop takes, knight recaptures, which recenters my knight with this double control over the e5 square. So bishop takes c4. Now I have a double attack on his bishop, so he has to react. He takes, I recapture, and I have a better structure, a central majority. He has 2 isolated pawns against just 1. And these 2 isolated pawns are located on semi-open files, meaning files that are open for attack, where my heavy pieces will be able to attack. So he played e6, he's aiming for bishop b4 check. That's not a problem, I could play bishop d2. I'm also looking at queen to d4 to attack his knight, which is pinned. But there will be bishop b4 check, I could play bishop d2. He can take, I can recapture. And he will have to defend his knight, certainly he will play queen d7, by the way. If I play knight e5, he will take defending the queen and counter-attacking. So here I'm simply going to do a kingside castling, and I'll look at moves like queen f4 a bit later. So he plays knight f6. So what really bothers me about queen f4 is queen d7. If I play knight e5, knight takes, I can recapture with the knight. He can take my queen. I recapture with the rook. I have a better pawn structure. Maybe it's better to keep the queens on the board. And if I play knight e5 myself, if he takes, I recapture, and this time I will have the threat of queen a4 check. For example, knight e5, knight takes, he plays bishop d6, but queen a4 check. Well, afterwards he could put the king on a7. No, because there would be knight c6, the fork, but he will certainly put the king on f8. But I think it's interesting. Why not? I'll play knight e5, let's see. So now I'm threatening queen f4, in addition to capturing his knight, of course. He takes pawn exchanges queens, doubling my pawns, so I recapture with the knight to give queen a 4 check now. He can no longer play queen d7 or c6. So he could play knight d7, but I don't think that's a very good move for him. Knight d7, maybe knight c6. So here I'm hesitating, either knight c6, but watch out for queen h4. He comes to attack h2. Well, I can play g3 and block. Because after knight c6, if he still plays queen c8, his queen isn't very well placed. But afterwards, he can push back my queen with moves like knight b6. Because I was also considering rook d1, thinking that if he takes, it frees up the attack on his knight, it opens the file. And here he can't, to castle. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to play rook d1. So the knight can't take. If the bishop takes, the pawn recaptures, and that frees up the attack on the knight, which is pinned, and so the king won't be able to castle. And now the king castles, but he leaves me the knight. He played too quickly. What is this all about? So if I take with the knight, maybe he planned queen h4, but I still have 3. But here I'm really tempted to recapture with the queen to offer the exchange of queens. I managed to win the extra piece, or by simply offering the exchange of queens. Look at what he prepared. I didn't play well here. On knight e5 or knight c5, he takes and I can't recapture because of the direct line. My rook is unprotected. Do you see the direct lines? You might think there are a lot of things in between, but in the end, the 3 pieces that separate them can be removed. I can't go to c5 or e5 because of the capture, and if I recapture, I lose the rook. I even get checkmated. I'm going to play bishop d2 and let him take back the knight. I got tricked. I played too fast. On the other hand, I don't have much time either. So since the bishop secures the b4 square, maybe I can play rook a5 and then play rook a1. But I don't actually need to put the rook on a5. I could put it on a4, but he might also try to go for c5. Still, I'm going to play rook a5. So the idea now is to play rook a1 and go win his isolated pawn on a6. So here after rook 1, he's going to play rook a7. Unfortunately, my bishop on the black square can't attack it. And if I play rook c1, now I'm going to play rook c1, I'll attack him on c6, and he'll have to play rook c7. If he plays bishop c7 to attack my rook, rook c5, and he loses c6 afterwards. Can I play b4, b5? b4 and then b5, he can't take with the pawn on a, but he can take with the pawn on c. How can I win the pawn here? As soon as I go to a, he goes to a7. Ah yes, there is a way to win c6 from him. Maybe rook a4, rook c4, and if he plays a rook c8, bishop to 5, and the pawn on c6 falls. But then he could play rook b7 to counterattack on b2. Let's try to play that anyway. Rook a4 to go to c4 and have bishop to 5, which destabilizes his rook from defending c6. There we go. Rook c4. He's going to play rook c8, but bishop to 5. That's going to be an unpleasant surprise for him. He can also try to counterattack on the pawn b2. He plays c5. So I take on c5. I attack his bishop. He arrives there, and then he launches an attack on the pawn. Maybe I can try to play bishop c3 to offer the exchange of bishops right now. If he decides to take it, I will recapture with the rook, of course. There we go. And now I have one more pawn, and I've successfully gotten rid of the bishops. However, the main problem is that I don't have much time left on my clock at all, so I really need to play much more quickly than this. Let's bring the king into the game. We bring the king over. He simply can't get past the strong blockade on a 3 for now, especially since the rook and the pawn are perfectly controlling that square. We bring the king. Come on, let's play rook a3 to attack the pawn on a 4 twice. He comes to defend, and I don't know what to do. I'll play king c2 to have the d-file if he wants to bring his king through. There we go, check if he comes to c6, rook d6, and I pick up the pawn on e6. If I play king c7, c6 with rook d7, there, rook d6. Ah, I didn't see kb5. King b5, king c3, I might be threatening rook d6. I'll rather play rook c3. I want to control the a3 square well. If I play a3, rook b6 check. It's funny because he has to come to the a-file and rook a3 mates. In any case, let's make him come to the a-file, regardless of the situation. King to a5, rook to a3, b4. He won't be able to do the en passant, and he's pinned. I'm threatening b4 mate, the pawn mate. That would be a bit amusing, actually. I don't know how he can avoid this mate, by the way. You see, there won't be the en passant because he's pinned. There's the pin on the file. A nice mate with the pawn. So I have the black and my opponent. What is he going to play against me? He plays the pawn to a4. We played c5. I can't remember if we played e5, but now I'm going to play c6, my Caro-Kann defense. He plays d4. I reply with d5. He pushes e5. We develop the bishop before playing e6. He develops the knight to f3. e6 for now is standard. He plays bishop to d3. I take. He recaptures with the queen. And now I'm going to play a variation I know. I wouldn't have played this if I hadn't already seen it in Grandmaster games. It's queen to a5 check. I know he'll be able to block so that I can play queen to a 6 afterwards. Why? Because when I play queen to a 6, either he trades the queens or he moves his queen. But queen against the square is fine. He can't castle anymore. If he trades the queens, the knight recaptures, and we get this endgame where I'm not at a disadvantage. Even if I'm less developed, the position is very closed, so it's fine in this endgame. Of course, you still have to be careful to build your game properly, but for now I'm going to play knight to e7. The knight can go to the f5 square, or after the c5 push, go to the c6 square. He plays bishop to f4. And so here, if I play c5 and he plays knight to b5 to try to get the d6 square, that could be a bit annoying. The knight controls the c7 square, so there won't be a fork, but the d6 square is a bit of a problem. So instead, I'll play h5 to get knight to f5. Why do I play h5 first? So I can't be chased away by g4. Knight to f5. You see, he can't play g4 against me anymore because there's a pawn on h5. He plays rook to d1 to defend. And now if I play knight to b4, I attack c2, he'll probably play rook to d2. I can always try to play c5, but I do not think it brings me much, even if my knight is badly placed here. Maybe it is not yet the right moment to play it. Okay, I will play bishop to a7. I will take my time. I will tease the pawn on h4. He plays bishop to g5, and now I am considering f6. Pawn takes, the bishop retreats. My king comes to d7, and my idea will be to play bishop to d6, then push to e5 at some point, maybe something like that. I'm not sure, but let us play it that way. f6, in my opinion, he will take to open the file. I recapture with the pawn, I attack his bishop, and I play king to d7. I open the g file. I do not know what I will get out of it, but for now, I play king to d7, I connect my rooks, and I protect on e6, which of course he will not fail to attack. I can't get to a 5, and now he's going to want to double the rooks to attack e6. I'll play bishop d6 to free the file and place my rooks. Bishop d6, bishop takes, king takes, that centralizes my king in the endgame. It's often a good thing to have a centralized king in the endgame. See, he doubles the rooks and I'll put the rook on e8. Which rook? Probably this one, to leave the other rook maybe to play on the g file. Rook e8. And I can't manage to play e5 because he attacks 3 times and I only defend twice. I need to improve the knight on h6 and the rook on h8. If I play rook g8, he'll just play g3. I don't really see what I'm going to do after that. Rook g4 with a double attack on the pawn d4, that's interesting. He'll play rook d2 to defend. After that, maybe I could play e5. But there are direct threats against me. Rook against king, rook against rook. If my rook is on g4, my rook on e8 will be better protected. It's dangerous. Listen, for now, I'm just going to improve my knight. I'm going to put it on c7. That defends e6. And we'll see what I do next. It also defends my rook regarding the direct threats here. It's a bit more reassuring. He plays g3. I'm still going to put a little rook on g8. Always useful. He breaks the pin by putting the king on h2. So if I play rook g4, I attack twice, but he can play rook d2 and defend 3 times. Here, maybe the idea of knight b5 to attack 1 more time, but he could exchange with me. So I'm looking at b5 to play b4, chase away the knight and have Calais b5 after, but he can always play c3. All right, I'll play b5. Let's see what comes of it. So the idea is to play b4, chase away his knight, secure the b5 square, and try to put as much pressure as possible on d4. He plays a 3, so I play a 5. Careful, the a file could open up, so I'll need to be able to get onto the a file. He plays before himself. So now what I'm going to do is immediately direct the rook to a 8. The knight is there, it's protecting the 6. I don't think he has a sacrifice anywhere. So rook to a 8. The idea is that if there are exchanges on b4, I recapture and a 3 becomes weak, and if not, I'll be the one to take and be the first to break into the position. Because here it could be interesting. I can play rook a3 to attack both knights, which can't be defended with rook e3 because I have my knight. So he plays knight d1. I take on b4, and now if I play rook a4, he defends with c3. But that forces his knight into a very defensive role, so we're going to play rook a4, provoke the move c3, and put pressure here on the pawn c3 so that the knight can't move anymore. The problem is that mine can't move either, but mine ties up both his rooks, whereas his knight only ties up one of my rooks in attack. I'd like to play knight takes, pawn takes, and capture this knight. But actually it's the knight that will capture. He plays rook c2, coming to defend like that. Here maybe knight h6, knight g4 check. He'll go to g2, and I don't see what comes next. The knight could help me support the push e5 maybe, but it's still not solid enough. He wants to play knight e3, that's it. That's why he put the rook there to defend. And if I play king d7 on knight e3, knight d6, that's my knight. He has some interesting new squares. Let's play it like that. King d7. I need to improve my two knights. Ideally, they would find the squares e4 and c4. Knight a8, knight d6, knight c4, knight d6, knight a4. Let's see, we'll guide him onto the white squares. He plays knight e3 and knight d6. With knight e4, I put pressure on f2 and I attack the pawn here twice. He plays there, he wants to play knight f4 to attack e6, but this knight is defending, fortunately. So I'm going to play knight e4, double pressure on the pawn c3. He comes to defend like this, and now I'm going to improve the other knight with knight e8, knight d6, knight c4 to attack the rook. He plays there, he's putting pressure on h5. I hadn't seen that. Can I let him take h5? I don't think so. So I hadn't realized he wanted to come play h5. Rook h8, he can come in on g6, but I think I can push his knight back with my rook. He plays king there. We're going to reposition the knight for the squares f5 and c4. I was on f5 earlier, so I don't know what I did. But let's play rook h6. He has to come back to f4. The specific knight located right over here on c4 is definitely going to be moving all the way over to this spot here. We're going to drive him out. I have to take risks because I don't have much time left. Regrettably, it seems that I do not have a significant amount of time remaining. Should the knight decide to move, it will then take on f2. I think my position is better. I have a more centralized king in the endgame, a strong center, but if my knight isn't there, there might be a fork. So we're going to play knight to d6, or knight takes on g3, and then do the fork, but he'll get his pawn back. I prefer to do the fork without giving anything away. And there you go, the fork. We take his rook. We bring in the knight. We're attacking c3. I missed pf2. I didn't see it, but I'm doing it now. Fork by knight. These knight forks are brutal. Come on, let's trade. Here, I'm just simplifying the position. He has no check against me. The knight is holding the e5 square. I only have 21 seconds left. I capture with check. I take here, and we're going to checkmate him with the king and rook. There you go. We're going to checkmate him with the king and rook. We move to the other side. He'll have to come back at some point. Here I make a little waiting move. He'll go to the corner. I follow him, and now there will be mate.